Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Tony Dudzik, Pick Guardian.
Jared Brandon, the pickup guy.
It just still sounds weird. Hey, everybody, this is me, Todd Novak. Welcome to the Guitar Knobs podcast. We are thrilled to death that you are listening to our show tonight.
Tomorrow.
It's tonight. Wherever you are.
They're listening tomorrow.
Wherever you're listening, this is a good thing. We are busting at the seams because tonight we have got a hell of a show. We've got two gentlemen on who are going to introduce themselves right now.
I am Brad Tolinski, the Great. No, I'm kidding. Brad Tolinski, I was the editor-in-chief of Guitar World for quite a number of years, and I've written books like Light and Shade, Conversations with Jimmy Page, Play It Loud, A History of the Electric Guitar. But I am here with my co-author, Chris Gill, to talk about Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen. Chris?
Yes, and I'm just Chris. I'm just a guitar geek, average guitar geek. Writing for 30 years about various stuff just so I can get free equipment. So it's and meet rock stars.
That works. I'm following in your footsteps, my friend.
Cool. All good.
Yeah.
He is not Chris the Great. He is Chris the Good.
Chris the Magnificent.
Chris the Lesser.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, hopefully, and everybody that is listening right now, you can tell we're already having a great time. I had the pleasure of talking with Brad earlier, and we could have gone on for quite some time, I'm very sure. So we're thrilled about this opportunity to get to talk to these two guys about, as Brad mentioned, their upcoming book, Eruption. And when I say upcoming, they'll get into all of the release stuff. So I just don't want to, I don't know what the exact legals are of that, but I'm sure they're going to tell us. But we're going to find out a whole bunch of stuff about the great Eddie Van Halen, about his guitars, the gear, the origin, the myths, the truths, the legends. And also just find out a little bit about, what was it like hanging out and talking and just being around the guy. So is that an adequate setup for you guys, you think?
Feels good to me.
Okay,
sounds good.
Perfect. Oh, I passed the first gate, thank God. I'm so nervous.
It's like Super
you guys,
Mario.
I mean, you guys are giants in the industry, so I'm legitimately... I'm a little nervous.
He's all verklempt.
Yeah. Anyway, so hey, we got a quick announcement here. Just wanted to let everybody know who has been waiting with bated breath. Not really sure what that means, but waiting with that anyways. For the announcement on the Spark amp giveaway. Yes, I did talk to Positive Grid this week.
Yes.
They have locked down a winner, and they have notified said winner, but said winner has not responded yet, so I can't get an official name to announce it officially. So gonna have to hang on just a second, and you might want to check your emails to find out if you're the winner here.
Check your junk folder.
Exactly.
Now, if I entered as Tony Bolonsky,
I may have entered
me?
you like that already. Seriously, I think I might have. So anyways, more to come on that. But in the meantime, you can still go get your own Positive Grid Spark amp and save $10 off with the code, all caps, Guitar Knobs and the number 10, okay? Guitar Knobs, number 10, positivegrid.com. Go get your $10 off this amazing little amp.
And if you do it soon, they have a very good deal going on, which is $50 off the list price.
Yeah, you just get all kinds of stuff off.
And a free gig bag, carry bag. And with this extra $10 off, you're walking out the door for under $250.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Nice.
It's such a nice piece of gear.
I got mine, and Zachary just got his the other day.
Yeah.
Mine is supposed to be here tomorrow.
I've got one of those too.
You do? Man, everybody's got they're great.
Everybody's got the Spark.
They're fantastic things.
I had one, and they took it away from me.
Get your own. I mean, they're great. They're a great Bluetooth speaker, even if you're not playing guitar.
Yes, that's true.
Buy one for your drummer.
Except Jared keeps yelling, screaming Alexa at it. So it doesn't work like that. Yeah.
Sparky. You got to say Sparky.
So, anyways, let's find out what we are doing, what's going on in our music worlds this week. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start off with Tanya over here, and then we're going to check in with Brad and Chris.
Okay. Shall I start?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So I did get official notice now about NAMM for 2022. January is not happening.
Right.
They have moved everything to June. I think it's the first weekend of June out in California.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that means there will be no summer Nashville show.
Yep.
I sort of believe that there will never be another Nashville summer show.
I think that's fine. I think that opens the door for opportunity for some other kind of awesome show. Jared and I were talking about this last night, actually, like what they do in Texas, like a bunch of more artists and more guitar-centered, focused, not guitar-centered, but guitar-focused.
So anyhow, so hopefully that goes off without a hitch next June. June of 22.
June 22.
So that
I'm looking forward to that.
I am looking forward to it. Are you going to go with me?
Yeah, we'll go.
Okay, fine.
Jared will be stuck at Gibson. Brad, you and Chris can hang out with us. We have a really great time. We take this really crappy 71 Winnebago all the way down.
You guys have a 71?
Yeah. It's it's
The
not
71. I mean, the 70 is the money Winnebago.
Yes.
You guys just missed it.
damn.
Yeah.
I think that's when they got rid of the self-cleaning toilets.
Well, anyway, so thank you, Tony, for
That's
that.
just a little update.
I appreciate that. Brad, how about yourself?
I was I can't reveal this, but I was I got a picture from a rock star friend of mine with a new guitar, and he was like, "Can you guess what this is?" And I was looking at it. It was a white SG with 2 gold-plated pickups, but vintage. And he was like, "Do you know who this belonged to?"
Buck
Can you-
Dharma.
That's what I guessed.
Buck
Les
Dharma of
Paul?
Blue Oyster Cult.
Les Paul, right?
What's that?
Wouldn't it be Les Paul?
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, he
Jared
didn't.
for the win.
Yeah, he didn't like the center pickup.
Yeah.
Didn't Mary Ford had the 3 pickup, right?
She did have one with 3 pickups,
Okay.
yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was sort of cool.
That's very cool.
Good answer, Jared.
Thank you.
Yeah, tell him what he won, Todd.
Yeah. Okay, so let's check in with Chris. What did you have going on in your music world this week?
Absolutely nothing. I mean, I'm
You
just...
got-
Come
Actually,
on.
I'm trying to decide what to do for my next tonal recall column in Guitar World magazine. So if anybody
There it is.
wants to know how a sound on a certain record was done, give me your requests.
Oh, okay.
Ah.
All right.
Oh, that's going on.
Where do they give those requests?
Good question. Sent it to the Guitar World editor online, the online editor, and they will funnel it to me.
Okay.
Nice.
So guys, is there a guitar sound that you guys always wondered, like, how did they get that? How did they do that? Like, how did they, what guitar are they using?
Oh, man.
There's a lot.
Yeah. Offhand, how do you do it?
I mean,
honestly, for the longest time, I was really intrigued at Johnny Marr's sound because it just had so open and
the How Soon Is
beautiful.
Now
Okay.
stuff is
like-
very cool. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Been there, done that.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll have to send you guys a PDF of that one. So
I would love to hear
Please
that.
do. Yes.
And actually, the funny thing is that Johnny, I based my article on what Johnny Marr said, and the producer / engineer of that record came back and said, actually, this is what really happened on that record. This is what we actually used. So it was kind of
kidding.
a bit of an educational process. It was very cool.
What's the gist of it, Chris?
The gist was about, gosh, I think 2 or 3 Fender amps, but a lot of the tremolo was actually created with a gate. And I'm trying to remember because it was a while ago, but I can't even remember what guitar he used, to be honest. So, but it wasn't just a matter of setting up a bunch of Fender amps with the vibrato going. It was a little bit more complicated than that.
Interesting. No. Would that have been the Rickenbacker?
Well,
days?
I don't. In the studio, I don't think he. I mean, there. We've talked about this before that. A lot of times people who are known live, for Rickenbackers, they're usually playing a Telecaster in the studio.
Oh.
Yeah, I believe it was a Fender of some sort. It was either that or it was Les Paul. I can't really remember, though. It's like I'm going to have to dig it up.
All right. Well, I'd love to read that. So if you are able to find that, let me know. Jared, how about yourself?
I went to a wedding over the weekend, and the person getting here it goes. Yeah, you just sit back and relax and listen. A good friend of mine, he was a drummer in a band I was in the past, and he must have invited everybody he was in a band with, because I saw a lot of old friends that I haven't seen in over 20 years in the band, in our local band circuit, and it was like a reunion. It was more than what I thought. I thought I would just go to this wedding, just say hi to a few familiar faces, eat a chicken sandwich and leave. But it was
or 3.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun seeing a lot of familiar faces and a blast from the past. So it was. I don't know, man. I mean, you kind of dream about that, just playing with, and they had instruments and all that stuff set up, so we got to play again, to try to play what we did 20 some years ago back in, what we did in the 90s or whatever. So it was it was a lot more than what I thought. I mean, to hell with the wedding, right? I mean, I had a great time with seeing all my old friends.
Sure the bride would say that too.
Now, did they have a cake, cupcakes, or cookie table?
They had both, but check this out. This is so Jared. I didn't know the bride's name, so I just put Mr. and Mrs. Jake Stuck. I didn't even know her first name.
That's acceptable.
Do you know her name now?
Yeah, it's Carrie.
Okay, that's
right.
okay.
You learned something.
Good job.
For me this week, I spent a fair amount of time with Vaderin pedals. So I got Vaderin pedals sent us some stuff, and I got to try out the HPX, which is their version of the harmonic percolator. Their Tone Fox, the vaporizer, and the Cherry Fuzz. So I'm just getting familiar with all those. Tony had some time with those, and so now I got him back, and he's going to be on the show pretty soon. So it was really fun just kind of, being able to play around with that. The harmonic percolator's got so much tonal range of what you can do with it. So I
like the vaporizer.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm liking them all. I just got to get more familiar with them. So that's what I got to do. And then,
I got your answer on the Johnny Marr guitar. Was
cool.
Epiphone Casino.
Oh, Casino. Okay.
All right.
Casino, yeah. And it was recorded through a stereo, Roland Jazz Chorus, and some Fender Twins. And he used a Drummer noise gate trigger set to a 16th note trigger from a cowbell coming from a Linn drum.
Wow.
Yeah.
More cowbell.
More cowbell.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
well, thank you. That's really cool to find out. Holy mackerel! I'm astounded by that. That was very accurate and amazing.
It's not easy to make Todd speechless.
No. So let's move on. Oh, geez.
Hey, Brad and Chris.
Hey.
Do you guys use patch cables?
Absolutely.
Have you ever tried Tour Gear Design patch cables?
Why? What is this of which you speak?
These are really nice.
Says so on the label. Really nice.
Really nice. It's really nice. It's made in Italy.
Hey.
It's really nice.
You are selling the hell out of these.
No, these are very cool. They're very flat. The cable itself
it's like
is
a flat ribbon cable.
The plug itself is not much larger than the actual 1/4-inch jack.
Yeah.
They come in a variety of shapes, so that if you have a pedal that has a
S shape, C
a
shape,
top top jacks and you want to connect it to something with a side jack,
you don't have to twist them all up.
They just do it.
Yeah. Wow. Super, super low profile and sealed ends. They're really incredible.
They're pretty much idiot proof.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm an idiot, so
yeah.
Perfect.
and all the lengths. They got
my goodness.
from 3 inches to I believe 24. And
colors? Any colors?
They're right now. I believe they're all black.
I think it's all black. You can have any color you want as long as it's black.
Yeah, just like a Ford. In order to get those, you need to go over to tourgeardesigns.com/discount/the guitar knobs. You're going to save 10% off your entire order.
Now you're telling me you're saying an extra 10% on
an
something
extra 10%
is already
they're
reasonably
already
priced?
Ridiculously affordable. For real, they actually are.
Yeah,
and
they're very cool.
I keep running into people who are using them as a result of trying one out, and then the whole board is done like that.
And as we've talked about, I think if you replaced your standard pancake cables with these cables, you might be able to fit
a lot more.
2 more pedals on your board, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, tourgeardesigns.com/discount/the guitar knobs. Save 10% on your whole order. Thank you to Tour Gear Designs for supporting our show and for sponsoring the 4 on the Floor.
How about some of these?
Oh, Tony, you look like you're going to die.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 4 on the floor.
All right, Brad Tolinski, let's hear your 4 on the floor.
Well, Todd, I believe that you really shouldn't have. I mean, this is just my personal philosophy, but as a guitar player, I only believe, other than your tuner, that you should force yourself just to pick 4 effects at a time.
Okay.
I think any more than that, it's a little excessive. And so I usually have a distortion, a delay, and a couple of other, fancy Dan trick sort of pedals.
Okay.
All right.
So I have for my distortion is the Mojo by TC Electronic.
Okay.
It's not for everybody. What I liked about it was, I mostly record original stuff, so I try to create like my own sound. And I didn't want something generic. And what's cool about the Mojo is that it's sort of a darker, it's a really dusky sounding overdrive. And I've only really seen I think Vernon Reid has one on his pedal board. I haven't seen too many people use it, but anyways, I love it. The other one's sort of a standard Boss, digital delay. One of my, the third pedal is I have the Boss Terra Echo. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
That's been on the show as a 4 on the floor before, yeah.
Yeah, I just like it because it has this sort of you could get these weird effects that are just add to the texture. Mm-hmm. You have you play some cool chord and you just hear some weird rumble-y thing in the background. I dig that. And then my other pedal is the Strymon Big Sky. For all sorts of other textural needs for zillions of other things that you can do with that pedal.
Yeah, that's been on a bunch of boards that we've had too.
Oh yeah. That's one of the most often mentioned ones that we've had on.
Between that and the Strymon Flint.
Yep.
Cool.
Well, the Flint is probably the best tremolo pedal out there these days, in my opinion.
Yeah. Most would agree. Let's see here. Chris, how about yourself?
Well, it's really hard for me to limit to 4, but having said that, I will.
Wait. Why is it hard for you to limit it to 4?
I own over 500 pedals, from vintage to boutique to you name it, pretty much. Even weird stuff I found over in Japan. So that's it's kind of hard for me to limit to 4, but I will try my best to do so.
Amazing.
All right, fire away.
Cool. Well, my first and foremost had to be a clean boost, and obviously the king daddy of them all would be the Klon Centaur, which I'm kicking myself for not buying when I got one to review way back in the day when they first came out. So the Klon KTR that pedal, just something like that. I just find the sweetening of it, just what it does to the tone, just how it just, it's kind of like it just pumps you up. Your tones gets pumped up. So, and if I didn't have that, the Solo Dallas Storm would be a good, replacement for that. And then of course a delay. You got to have a delay. I like delay for everything, whether it's, a little bit for room reverb type of ambience to, your full on edge type of echoes or whatever, the 3/4 note trick. But my choice would be the Strymon El Capistan.
Oh, yeah.
Because I just find I have a couple, old tape echoes, and it's just a pain in the ass to keep those things maintained. They sound great, but the Capistan does the trick, and I can take it to a gig and not have to worry about, the tape getting messed up by someone spilling beer on it or whatever, and the motor's getting out of whack, you name it. Then, good old treble booster of the Dallas Rangemaster variety. Mm-hmm. My choice for that right now, probably my favorite is the Analog Man Beano Boost. I like just the fact that it has the 3 switches to kind of change the tonal character, although I really prefer the straight out classic setting. But as part of my tonal recall things, I found so many players, so many of my favorite classic tones were done with an old British treble booster. And it just does magical things. It should be called like a mid-range, sweetener or something like that, because I find it just gives you this really sweet mid-range. And you got the Brian May thing going on. You've got Rory Gallagher. You've got Tony Iommi. You've got Richie Blackmore. Just all those players. It's just, for me, it's a go-to.
So, I think that, treble boost can sometimes be a bit of a misnomer.
Absolutely.
Because it's, I think, starting guitar players think treble boost. Well, no, my guitar's already bright.
Yeah.
But how, in your opinion, how does it sweeten the sound?
Well, first of all, it shelves off. It cuts off the bass. It acts like a bass filter, like any good recording engineer would do. It just basically takes out those extra bass frequencies, which is what really muddies up your tone. Boosts the mid-range, and as a result, the treble gets a little bit brighter, but not much. Actually, it's really like the mid-range gets more punchy and just focused.
They figured that bass cut wouldn't make any sense to anyone.
Exactly, and it might have been just a happy byproduct of it all. But that's what I found, especially with a lot of those old British amps. They do have a lot of bass and everything, and it helps you really cut through, especially when you're playing at stage volume. And of course, it gives you a little extra grit as well, a little extra boost in your signal.
I'm glad that you mentioned the Beano. That hasn't actually made it on at all on the fourth floor. We've had, like 500, probably close to at least 600 pedals.
Oh wow!
Mentioned over the last.
I'll bet you my next one has never been mentioned either.
Okay.
The Ibanez Jetlizer.
Jetlizer.
The Ibanez Jetlizer, also made by Maxon in like 76 to 78. Ooh. It's basically a phase shifter, and it's a great phase shifter. First of all, it kind of has a little bit of that kind of chewy, kind of like the Maestro, the PS1A, the one that was used in like John Paul Jones used it with Zeppelin, and Ernie Isley used it on That Lady. But it goes a little bit beyond that. It also has what they call a jet setting, which is kind of like a white noise generator that weird. You can step in and just engage. And it's really cool because you have to put that white noise in there, and it makes it sound like a jet. That's what you want to do. It makes it kind of flangy and just swirly, and it's a great weird pedal, but it's also a great usable phase shifter as well.
Is it like, have you seen Junior's Grades? Is it like that kind of?
kind of like that.
Yeah. So, okay. And just try to imagine it. I'm just trying.
I have to give a shout out to my friends over in Tokyo, the Weed Sweet Drive and the Honda Soundworks Fujiyama Drive. The British, those are just, when it comes to distortion, I think the Japanese just do something absolutely wacky and crazy and beautiful. And those two pedals, those are my bonus pedals. So
wow,
so that's my 6.
The way that you described the Ibanez Jetlizer, also known as the JL70.
Ooh.
Yes,
oh, there you go.
I just looked it up. It's orange and black. Hey, we already like it. But when you were describing that made me think of Living in Stereo from the Cars.
Like it is kind of like that.
Yeah, just this sort of like, yeah. Oh, that's such a great song. Anyways,
Yeah.
I love the Cars. Doggone it.
I'm shaking like tremolo.
Yeah. So, wow, that's some eclectic.
Yeah, I'll say
Stuff. I like it. There's a couple of those Jetlisers on Reverb. You may have to mortgage your house to get them, but
yeah, they're not cheap anymore. I was lucky; I found them back in the day when they were just like no one wanted that stuff.
Yeah,
so
they're about $500 right now.
Yeah, and you have to get them from Australia and like Italy or something.
Wow. Crazy. Well, that is a vault I would like to peek my head into, my friend. Maybe someday we'll get the opportunity to talk more about that. And also, you mentioned what you're writing for a few times. Do you want to explain that a little bit? Tonal Recall specifically.
Yeah, and it's basically where I take a song and kind of dissect the guitar tone, basically the gear. I mean, sometimes I get into the recording technique, but not too much because we only have so much space. Mm-hmm. But basically, it's like the rig that was used on a particular song.
Cool.
It kind of what started it out. Well, first of all, it's just my own obsession. I have my gear collection, which is why I have 500 pedals, 80 amplifiers, and 150 guitars. Has been trying to copy all these sounds I've heard on records. So it's like, okay, I need an Angus Young rig. I need a Brian May rig. I need an Eddie Van Halen rig. I need a Metallica rig. I need a Dimebag Darrell rig.
Can you do me a favor and call my wife and tell her that I'm not so bad?
It will cost you though, but I'll do it.
I'll send you a guitar.
Okay, cool. There you go. Perfect. That'll make everybody happy.
Chris's neighbors have the police on their speed dial.
My neighbor, like he's the perfect dad rock guy. He wears like Aussie shirts. And he's always blasting Led Zeppelin. So they actually like it when they hear the sounds coming out of my basement. So they actually dig it.
That's very cool. Well, thank you both for sharing your four on the floor. It's always super fun to hear what other people value, what they hold dear, and what they love. So it's really, really cool. And we always learn something new, which is what the show's really about. I mean, when it comes down to it. So speaking of learning new things, we are going to benefit from all of the hard work that you've put into your book called Eruption. I'm going to let you guys set this up so that I don't butcher it. So please introduce us to Eruption.
Well, I think the sort of idea behind Eruption Conversations with Eddie Van Halen is to, present like a full portrait of this guy that so many people have loved, not only from his, sort of personal, from his personality to what he did, to his music and how he played, and, to give the full sort of, package of who Eddie Van Halen is, who was, people see him as this sort of smiling boy next door, but he was a rather complex individual. And the idea behind the book was to try to show all the different facets of what he was all about. I mean, we'd seen some other books out there, and they sort of focus more about the drama. And we definitely have that part of it in the book, but the other part is just, hey man, first and foremost, the guy was a guitar player. Mm-hmm. And so that had to be included in this book.
And on top of that, it was the whole package. It was just him as a guitar player, him as a composer, him as a musical instrument innovator. That was the kind of things we wanted to dive into. And it was also very important to tell as much of Ed's story as we could in his own words, because unfortunately he didn't have the opportunity before he passed to sit down and tell his life story. Although he actually did, because he told us in the course of all these interviews that we had done with him over the years. We just felt this was a proper tribute to the guy. We wanted to really present his story the way that we thought he would present it, and really, let him tell as much of it as he could in his own words. I mean, obviously we do have our intros where we go into a little bit more in depth, because there's some topics he didn't talk about, and we just need to set things up so people understand what the interviews are about. But it really was, the idea was just, this is like as close as you can get to a genuine Eddie Van Halen autobiography.
And where are these interviews coming from? Where are these perspectives coming from?
Well, both Chris and I have known Eddie for, I guess it's getting close to 3 decades now. And it was mostly through both of our writing and work with Guitar World that we would regularly get a chance to talk with Ed. And the thing about Ed was that he was always looking to make personal connections with people. So, by the second or third time we would talk to him, it was like talking to an old friend, and he sort of wanted it that way.
Before we get into the meat and potatoes of all of the interviews and things like that, I think you just laid out a kind of a groundwork now. What kind of a guy was he to talk to? I mean, was he? I mean, everything I've heard and read is that he was, a kind of a quiet, humble guy. Is that true?
I don't know if he was quiet exactly.
That's not a word I would use to describe Eddie Van Halen at all. Quiet. That would probably be way down the list.
I'm talking off stage. Yeah. How was he off stage?
He was a good dude, and that was the great thing about it. And pretty honest. You could ask him pretty much anything that you wanted to. There wasn't really anything off limits, and he would tell you, pretty honestly how he felt about things. He wasn't that circumspect, so it was always a great interview. It was always fun. Sometimes he would say things off the record. A lot of that's in this book now, in retrospect. But he was a good guy. And I guess going back to what you're saying is sort of the purpose of the book too, is that he had a fairly complex life. And in the book, we tried to provide this, arc. He came over to the U.S. As an immigrant, couldn't speak English when he came here, was bullied and harassed as a young man at school. So what happened was he sort of retreated into his own world, which was a world of music, of playing piano, playing guitar. And it was sort of during this period that he developed this sort of social anxiety about dealing with people and dealing with people at large. So we tried to present that story. And then all of a sudden, because of his, focus on music and introversion, if you will, he became this incredible player that we all know and became a superstar. And we sort of examine, how well or not how well he was prepared to deal with that and all the impact that ended up having on his life.
One of the books that I've enjoyed recently was Running with the Devil, from the perspective of their manager. And that one obviously does go into quite a lot of the exploits and everything. But I think one of the things that I pulled from that, touching on what you just described, was this a very simple guy in a very complex life. And
that's, I think, to a T, that really that sums him up. I mean, I think there's a quote in the book where Ed says, like, if I didn't learn how to play guitar, I'd probably be pumping gas.
Yeah.
That way he'd have to live in New Jersey or Oregon. So at this point.
Yeah. That was, amidst all of the shenanigans and everything, the craziness that they talked about, that particular thing struck me because I don't think most, we growing up watching, we never would have imagined that this guy is just like, I just want to do my thing. Why does everything have to be so complicated? Can't you do, even to the point of at one point, like he just wanted to quit altogether because he's like, I don't, this isn't why I'm doing this, which is shocking. It's crazy to think about somebody at the top of their game going like, let me out of here.
Well, I don't know if he was so simple, I mean, I thought he's sort of a complicated guy in a certain kind of way. Like if you're simple, you aren't completely reinventing the guitar.
Well, I just mean simple in the sense of he was sort of focused, single-minded, simple, not like all of the trappings of everything that were being piled on with him. Yeah. And he's like, I just want to play awesome music and I'm doing this stuff. That I don't mean simple, like, a simpleton or something like that. I mean, obviously he was a genius, but that's what I meant.
Yeah. There's a story in the book actually that sort of goes to that point where he's at Frank Zappa's studio with Steve Vai, and the three of them are jamming and they're playing on this guitar, sort of passing it around. And, the guitar has like some fret buzz, and Steve said, "Well, most people would just say, hey, get me a new guitar," but Ed just basically asked Frank for a screwdriver and shoved it underneath the nut and lifted it up a little bit and proceeded just to keep on playing, without the buzz. So Steve said that summed up Ed to him in a nutshell. Like, if he needed to get something done, he just did it. He just took it into his own hands and, made it happen.
Right. Can either of you talk about any one of the more extraordinary occurrences that you felt that you had with your time with him?
I can definitely speak to that. It was 2013. The cover story I did with him for Guitar Aficionado magazine, where we basically were doing a feature on his guitar collection. Mm-hmm. And that was just phenomenal because that was spending the whole day at 5150. Him and Matt Bruck pulled out 50 guitars for me to check out and photograph with photographer Kevin Scanlon, great photographer. And basically we went through, saw all these guitars, all these legendary guitars. Obviously the Frankenstein, I got to hold the Frankenstein, the 5150 guitar, the Rude guitar. It just goes on and on. The Carved Dragon guitar. All these iconic instruments, a bunch of stuff I never had any idea he ever had. He had like this Vox guitar organ, which was like really bizarre. It's like, and he said, I was doing something with Chris Cornell, and like, man, that dude will sing to anything, and it's, but it's just an amazing day. I mean, it was talk about guitar heaven. There's like vintage. I mean, for a vintage guitarist, it might have been like going to a Halloween horror house because there were these beautiful 50s, 57 Strats, and the volume control was taken off of both of them, and one had 5150 scratched into the finish. It was just, just remarkable to see. And I mean, there's a guitar from B.B. King that B.B. King had given him a Lucille guitar and signed it, and Ed had taken the bridge and a bunch of parts off of it, and used it for some other project. And he's just like, I'm not sentimental about my guitars, so, but that was amazing. Then, after we took the photos, we sat down and spent a good part of a few hours going through each one. And he told me the stories behind each one. Wow. And you'll see that in the book in the Eddie's Oddities section, because that was something when we were working on the narrative. It's like, there's these great stories, but they don't really quite fit in to the overall arcing story that we were telling. But there's like, like when he was working on learning to see, and he had this Telecaster and that he wanted to use for this one overdub. And he said, he couldn't get it in tune. So he took it outside and threw it up in the air. And instead he got these 3 airline guitars and clamped them to stools and tuned each one to an open tuning. And then when the part came up, he just would lean over and strike the chord on each one. Just like crazy, wow. Mad scientist type of stuff, and but that was amazing. And then the next day we spent on the beach at Malibu. We went over to Valerie Bertinelli's house and went down on the beach and shot some crazy photos of like him with this huge Gibson Mando bass from 1910. That was we used for the cover image. Ed wanted to use that image on the cover. A bunch of people said, why didn't you use the Frankenstein? Like, Ed wanted this wacky off the wall photo, but it was a great day. We're on the beach, and he's got all these crazy instruments, and people are walking by like looking at us and like going, what, and like, it's like, do you realize you are in the presence of greatness?
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I had a couple of memorable moments with that. I mean, I got to see a band rehearsal at like SAR, which was incredible, just sitting there and watching the band basically play in a room to me. So that was fun. But this is sort of a story that sums up a little bit of who Ed was. So I went to go see him play. This was sometime in the late, no, it was probably like in the mid 90s somewhere. And we went to some Enormo Dome somewhere. And I went backstage afterwards and said hey to Ed, and we hung out a little bit. And he leans over to me and he says, Brad, I gotta tell you something. And I'm like, what's up? He says, this isn't the right place. Follow me. So we leave this room, the backstage area, and he starts walking into sort of the concert, to the backstage area. And I'm following him. And where are we going, Ed? He says, just follow me. And we go back, and he takes me into the bathroom. And we're the only two guys standing in this bathroom. And I said, what's up? And he says, listen, I got to tell you something. You got to do something with your hair.
God. That's good.
Yeah, you gotta fluff it up. I don't know, but right now this thing isn't working for you.
Oh my goodness sakes! You gotta do something with your hair.
Oh my god!
But that was Ed. I mean, there was a sort of sweetness in that gesture.
So, yeah, he didn't want to embarrass you in front of a bunch, I guess.
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. And that he cared on some level. You know.
Wow.
Now, most of the a lot of the book you're talking with him, but I also know that you spent a lot of time, especially Chris, with the Guitar World, the recent article that you put out regarding the equipment, and that was. I mean, that I needed I felt like I was.
Yeah, we needed a flow chart.
The Beautiful Mind, with the red string going everywhere, trying to chase this stuff down. Part of the allure and the lore that still fascinates us about Eddie is that we don't. It isn't a very clear story, the progression of the instrumentation. We know chunks, or at least we think we do.
Yeah.
Right.
But you guys have spent a lot of time trying to actually connect the real dots.
Well, that's the challenge with Ed. Part of it is it's like anybody. What do you remember from 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago? And he would say these things like with the Frankenstein. I remember when when EVH Fender / Jackson did the replica of the Frankenstein back in 2007, and Ed had said, "Oh yeah, I that guitar, I built it in 74, 75," and that never sat right with me. It's like that just doesn't sound right. It's like if he had it, then why don't we see it in these photos? And over the years, a lot more photos have appeared from the early days online. And fortunately, Greg Renoff with the Van Halen Rising, that kind of brought a lot of stuff out of the woodwork. Mm-hmm. And we were seeing these photos, like, well, where's the Frankenstein? And it's like, I remember, years and years and years ago, it was probably BAM Magazine or some other local, like the LA Reader or something like that, had a picture of Ed playing a Stratocaster with a humbucker in it. And that stuff stuck with me. And I found out who the photographer was who shot that. But you see these things and you start to put together a timeline. You realize, okay, they were playing at the Starwood, they were playing at the Whiskey. Well, you do your research, you find out, well, they didn't play the Whiskey until December of 1976. And I think that the Eureka thing, it was like the Rosetta Stone were these photos. There was actually a photo that came out in about 2013 of Ed playing a bare-bodied guitar, and everybody's like, this has to be the Frankenstein. It has the pickguard with the weird notch in it, the hand-cut pickguard on it, the black pickguard. But it had a rosewood fretboard on it, and it had this black and white zebra pickup, and it wasn't quite there yet. And then there was this guy, Bo Shannon, who had detailed photos that he shot. And you can see, again, there it is. Again, there's that bare body guitar. And I reached out to Bo and found out, it was Pasadena Civic, February 18th, 1977. And Bo was like the guy who really put all the dots together, because he also had pictures of Ed playing the 3-color Sunburst 61 Strat. And then he had Ed playing what I know is that's the same Strat, but he painted it white. And it was only that way for a short period, because then he had the Frankenstein, essentially. He took the neck off that guitar. I mean, it is kind of a beautiful mind. You got to connect all these dots and everything. But the photo evidence is out there. You get the dates and everything. You do the timeline, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is what happened. Then Ed didn't actually paint the Frankenstein with the famous black and white striped finish until July 15th of 77. Mm-hmm. It's really insane, and you kind of thought it just came out of the womb. Boom, Ed had the Frankenstein black and white finish, and a cigarette in his mouth, and then he put it in headstock and whatever.
Yeah. Well, and it's also interesting because I think a lot of us believe that it's like, well, first there was the white guitar with the black stripes, and then somehow that became Bumblebee, the yellow one, or the black one with the yellow stripes, and then it like what the progression, we just kind of assumed that it went like that.
Right.
But there's your article uncovers quite a few things that are there's like how many different necks switching back and forth on that thing,
and
he did a lot of switching back and forth. And the thing that mystifies me the most, and I didn't actually get the chance because we were limited on space with the article, but I wanted to go a little bit deeper into the fact that when he made the Frankenstein initially, it had 2 knobs on it, and Ed always said, like, I only knew how to hook up the volume pot, but when he had with the original black pickguard, it had 2 knobs on it. And then when he put back on the white pickguard, the mint-colored pickguard from the 61, he put that on there. And then it had 1 knob. But then when he first put the black pickguard back on and did the black and white striped finish, it had 2 knobs again. Mm. And I believe, and I'm pretty certain from the timeline, that it had 2 knobs on it when he recorded the Van Halen, the debut album. And then we saw that later when he painted the Frankenstein red. There's some photos on the 79 tour where the guitar has 2 potentiometers again. One doesn't have a knob on it. And even the black and yellow, the Bumblebee Charvel, there's a picture that was taken for Young Guitar, and they showed the back of it, and it doesn't have a control plate on it. And you can see there's a potentiometer inside shoved in there. What was that doing? Mm-hmm. Was there something else? Did he have some secret? And I wish he was still around so I could kind of, probe him about that and say, Dad, what were you doing? What's going on there? Was there a tone control? Was it some strange volume thing? What were you doing?
That's sort of one of the things that, is a string that goes through the entire book, is that he was never happy with one thing. He was always messing around with this, that, the other thing, pulling pickups in, putting them out. We think of the Frankenstein as a static instrument, but it was very much like how Les Paul used to always tinker with his guitars and improve them or change them or experiment with them. The Frankenstein was a work in progress throughout his entire life.
Yeah.
It's such a intriguing thing altogether. I have to ask, whether it was talking about the gear or just sitting with him, did you get the impression at any point in time that he wanted to distance himself from that guitar in some way?
Oh, no. He loved that guitar. I mean, that's why he kept it around. I mean, he wasn't sentimental about the guitar. I mean, Brad can attest to him throwing it in the back of a pickup truck, with no case and just literally chucking it, in there. So he didn't treat it with kid gloves or anything like that. But no, he knew it was an important guitar for his career. I mean, he knew he recorded all these records with it.
Yeah.
And it was such a reflection of him. I describe in that article as it's kind of being this magical talisman, because I don't know for sure because I don't know if there's any pictures, and I doubt it because there were so few people there. But the night that they got signed by Ted Templeman at the Starwood, February 2nd, when Ted Templeman showed up, he saw those shows February 2nd and February 3rd. It's highly likely that might have been the first time Ed played the Frankenstein body,
Mm-hmm.
It's very highly likely that was the case. And it's just like, gosh, was that just kind of like this, is it like that magical Louisville Slugger or whatever,
Yeah.
that, just all of a sudden everything just falls into place,
Yeah. On that note, you just said the Louisville Slugger. Jared and I were talking about this last night, and this is going to come to my next question here real quick, is that, you have somebody, I said, take any famous baseball player who has had like this one bat that they've had their whole career, and then all of a sudden, they just stop using it. Like, why would someone do that? And that conversation was the preempt to trying to determine, like, as in 1991, for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge comes out, and that's the first time we're not really seeing the guitar.
True. Well, actually, and before that, I mean, the Kramer, he went to the Kramer 5150. That kind of became the new Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Starting with the 1984 album. But yeah, but it was like, I think that was part of it was, he started to become involved with guitar companies. So I think he also felt a bit of a duty to them, but he also liked the guitars he was playing. With Kramer, it happened to be, guitars that he went and built himself. Mm-hmm. He went to the factory and he insists that he really only built the 5150 guitar and the 1984 guitar, and the rest were built by Kramer employees, and just stuff that he had is either tour backups or giveaway guitars or whatever. But the two that he actually hand built himself were those two guitars. And then, of course, he got involved with Ernie Ball Music Man, and that was a much more in-depth project, and it just went from there.
Yeah. I mean, that was the most noticeable change, because even the Kramer ones, it was like, that's still kind of like the guitar, but outwardly facing, not radically different. But here's this the rock god, guitar player who all of a sudden is playing a completely different guitar.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think one of the things that we're trying to stress in the book was that as much as everybody tried to, fans included, tried to keep Ed in this sort of little cage, the smiling guy with the red and white striped guitar. That wasn't in Ed's vocabulary at all. He was always trying to push ahead, do something different, discover new things, whether it worked or whether it didn't work. He really had very little sort of regard for the past. So, a couple things went into him creating the Ernie Ball guitars or the Wolfgang guitars. One is he just got tired of everybody just basically ripping him off. I mean, we sort of talk about him in the book going to these music stores and them turning into weird funhouse versions of the guitar that he made. Mm-hmm. Like he'd go in there and see all of a sudden other companies putting in the one pickup and putting the stripe, and the guitars being sort of crappy, So I think he thought, well, screw it. I'm not going to let these people exploit all of my ideas, and I'm going to keep moving forward. So that was a big part of it. You brought up Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. To me, one of the interesting things about that record was it's the first time you really hear Ed using a neck pickup.
Yeah. For
better or for worse, And I think he really wanted to create a guitar that had more versatility. He was going for different sounds and different ideas. And the idea of using a neck pickup, if he could get it to sound the way he wanted it to sound, was totally intriguing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that kind of makes me feel like something else that we discussed, which was did the I guess the Frankenstein start to become almost equal to or bigger than him?
In some respects, yes. And I think the thing, though, that you kind of alluded to is that a lot of people weren't aware, and Ed even says that, either people thought he was taking the same guitar and just kept on modifying it and giving it new paint jobs, or else they thought he just had a different guitar every time.
Yeah.
So, but I think the red and white and black version of Frankenstein just became such a part of Ed's personality and this image that he had, that it really was. I mean, it's, you saw that even when I think it was the 2012 tour where he brought out, and actually he even did it a bit on the 2007 and 8 tour where he brought out the replica of the Frankenstein, and it would get cheers,
Yeah. Yeah.
All hail red guitar.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so, we talked a little bit, and the big transition was when the Ernie Ball Music Man version came out. How did that transition over? I was always kind of confused what how it transitioned over into the PV Wolfgang model. I don't know, did something fall apart at Ernie Ball Music Man and then he shopped it over to PV, or how did that work?
Well, I think the thing was, it's kind of interesting. I know Sterling Ball very well. He's a good friend. There's a little bit of some gossipy crap that's out there, and I'm not going to bring it up because that's between the parties involved, and whether it's true or not, who knows, and I don't really care. But I think the thing was really with Ed was, at first he liked the idea of having this kind of, hand-built, up in San Luis Obispo, short drive for him to go up to the factory, and he loved the idea that it was kind of limited. But after a while, he got sick of people saying, like, dude, I ordered your guitar. It's like a 2-year waiting list. I can't get it. I want one, and everything. And he was just tired of people telling him, I really like that guitar, but I can't get one. And PV was well equipped to mass produce the guitar. And he already had the deal. Actually, Sterling's the one who set up the deal with him and PV. He's the one who told Ed that you should call PV up to do an amp. Because Ed wanted to do an amp.
Right.
And Sterling's the one who said, you should talk to Hartley Peavy, and so he's the one who opened that door up. And then Ed kind of, said, he realized, oh, well, hey, Peavy's making my amp. Well, they can make my guitar too, so CS, door shut,
Okay.
And it sucked for Sterling, and it was tough, but they just, they still, they make guitars in limited amounts, and they keep their quality very high. Mm-hmm. And with PV, he just saw that they could churn these things out all day long, and everyone could get them, and the price would be cheaper too.
Right.
And then Fender was the next step after that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, early on, we've got Charvel in the mix, and that arguably is that where he got the initial body, right?
I think, yeah.
Yes. Charvel's interesting. I think Charvel was like Ed's college, course. He used to go to that shop all the time and just sit on the floor and watch them do stuff and pick up knowledge and everything. And again, we couldn't get this nerdy in the book. There'll be a guitar nerd book one day, but it's been said that Ed, even like with the Variac idea, actually came from Charvel, because I had come across something just completely unrelated, but I was looking up just Charvel history, and that was kind of part of the timeline thing with the Frankenstein, was when, which is why 74 and 75 was just impossible, which I'll get to. But I was reading this thing about Wayne Charvel talking about, I had a friend and he used to modify Fender twin amps by putting a variable transformer in them, aka a Variac. Mm-hmm. And he had one at the shop. And it's just like, oh yeah, I bet Ed saw that, I mean, come on. Mm-hmm. But anyways, he went to Charvel and he started to learn tips about putting guitars together. He went there and got pickups, and things, because that was his big thing, was just putting in pickups in guitars. He did that, and I think pretty much every guitar he owned early on, except for the Ibanez Destroyer. And then, of course, after he cut it up and turned it into the Shark, after the first album was recorded, then he started swapping pickups on that too. Mm. But Charvel, through my research, and I went through all my old guitar player magazines, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78. I looked up every Charvel ad, and you can see this progress. They started out, and the thing that they initially sold were jack plates and Strat replacement pickguards. And the bodies don't start showing up until late 76. And it fits with those photos when he shows up with the guitar with the naked body. and actually even Wayne Charvel had said that him and Dave Schechter actually spent a weekend and they built like about 100 guitar bodies. And Charvel insists that it actually wasn't a Boogie Bodies, but it was actually one of those bodies that him and Dave Schechter built. And there's a few people out there who have done the really, deep diving and looked at the contours and all this other stuff and said, yeah, there may be some credence to that. But at the same time, Chip Ellis told me that there was a Boogie Body stamp on the Frankenstein when he did the replica. So I don't really know where to go with that. I might lean more towards Chip Ellis having said that. But then again, there may be political ramifications behind that. I don't know. But I think Chip was pretty much straight shooter at that point. In fact, we had to kind of take Boogie Bodies out of the article because it was a legal concern with Fender now making this thing.
Oh.
Even though it was a Boogie Bodies copy of a Stratocaster, everything which was their property. Go figure. But yeah, it was just interesting because you see this stuff come together. The Boogie Bodies neck. That's the other thing that doesn't show up on the Frankenstein until that July 15th photo when it has the black and white finish. Before that, it had the 61 Strat, the rosewood fretboard on it with the rounder. With a 7.5 inch radius on it. Ed always says, I spent $50 for the second and I bought this neck for $80. And it's like, well, Boogie Bodies started, you see this in the Boogie Body, the Charvel ads where they're advertising Boogie Bodies products. And all of a sudden you see a picture of a neck and it looks exactly like the Frankenstein neck. And that comes a little bit later. It comes in about, I think, like probably the April issue or something like that, April 77 issue of Guitar Player. I think that Ed actually ordered the body at the same time that ordered the neck at the same time he got the body, and took a while for, I can't remember the guy's name, the Boogie Bodies guy. But he had to actually make the neck for Ed.
I think, guys, to just pull back a second, the big takeaway is that this was a thing that Chris discovered that I was surprised about too, is that how much the Frankenstein, how much all the things that we loved about Eddie Van Halen, including the technique of tapping, really just came together in this weird 3-month period before they recorded the first record. Like, everybody thinks that this thing, like, Ed had been doing this all through his club days, and it had a 2-3 year evolution. But really, not only the Frankenstein, but you don't really hear, like in the early bootlegs, him tapping or doing a few of these techniques. So there's this sort of interesting period where the band gets signed, and then Ted Templeman can't get to the record right away because he's finishing up a Doobie Brothers record. And so there's this 3-month period where Ed and the band are a little dormant. I mean, they're playing a club gig here and there. But during that time, we could just imagine Ed was like, my God, here's going to be our big shot. We're going to record our first record. And sort of all these ideas that have been floating in the air, he really pulls them together and focuses in this extraordinary 3-month period before the first record gets recorded.
So yeah, downtime to actually pull focus, which is oftentimes the opposite. It's like you're playing, you get signed, and then all of a sudden it's whirlwind, and most people can't remember most of it.
Yes.
And I think Ed was just, that's the thing. He was woodshedding. He was really working. I think that, Ed talked about like with the demos, like how cause kind of him and Alex, like they got the demos and they were a little disappointed. Like they listened to him in Alex's van, like, gosh, we were expecting like Led Zeppelin and something really huge. And I think that kind of lit a fire for Ed. It's like, we can do better. And Ed, I think, went to town. He worked on the Frankenstein. He worked on his tapping technique and really just refined it. He worked on his whammy bar technique. He worked on how to keep the guitar really in tune. He worked on his tone. Just everything. He just said, okay, this is going to be my big statement, and that's what he did. Is that. The demos sound great, and they do resemble the first album, but the first album is just like something happened in between. And also they spent a lot of time out, going to punk shows at the Whiskey. Mm-hmm. And they went out and they wrote Ain't Talking About Love, Atomic Punk, Lost of Control. Mm-hmm. So they kind of absorbed that in their own weird way and came up with this kind of genius stuff. I love Atomic Punk. That intro is just, talk about the jet phaser, it's, or the jetlizer, it's like, I just love that dissonance. It's just like, wow, this is like, who does that? That's more punk than punk because there's not even a note, Yeah.
Do you think that when he changed the neck from the 61 Strat to what's on it now or was on it at the time, that was part of him improving his tapping technique and things
Absolutely.
Like that?
Yeah. Absolutely. It had the jumbo frets on it. It had a wider, flatter radius. I know it's in that Guitar World article that I wrote, but it was, there's the specs are there, for like a Type C neck, I think they called it or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it really did facilitate that for Ed, that it was much easier for him to perform that. Whereas with, a 61 Strat neck is kind of round, and kind of thin and has these little frets on it, mm-hmm. And that's the thing. You don't really hear that, what we all know and love is that tapping segment that ends Eruption. You don't hear that in Ed's Eruption solo really until like these mid-July bootlegs, and afterwards. Before then, you kind of hear little bits and pieces of it, but you don't hear this fully formed showcase.
Yeah. Speaking of the neck and the frets and everything, one of the questions that we got from our listeners was, did the Frankenstein ever get refretted?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, absolutely. Ed wore through frets. That's why, his current Wolfgang, when they did that, at EVH, it has stainless steel frets on it because mm-hmm. Ed would just wear through frets in a matter of weeks sometimes. So it was definitely refretted.
Yeah.
It was really interesting when we would, Chris and I would hang out with Ed at 5150. Invariably, Ed would pick up a guitar and play and demonstrate something or, make a point about a song that we were talking about, and he would pick up the guitar. And there was nothing casual about the way he played the guitar. He, everything, even when he was just showing you things, had purpose. And he really just, had a very heavy hand on the fretting hand and on the picking hand.
Mm. It was like the unplugged guitar was amplified already.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you heard like 90% of that Eddie Van Halen tone. It's just like it sounds like Van Halen.
Yeah.
It was just amazing,
Was he a person when talking with him? Do you think that he always had to bring it back to music, or did the conversation always stay there, or was he a kind of person who was like, yeah, everybody wants to talk to me about guitar stuff, but hey, how about the Mets?
Never. No. He that's why he talked with Brad and I so much, because we're guitar players ourselves, and it was just like, I think people wanted to talk with him about the other stuff, and he didn't want to talk about that. He wanted to talk about the guitar stuff. When he did the Wolfgang guitar, I went down to the Fender custom shop in Corona, and they set up all these cameras, like the big Hollywood production and everything. This is because this was going to be partially for Fender for promotional purposes. Mm-hmm. But we talked for hours. And you talk about what went into the Wolfgang EVH guitar, 2 years of development, 9 months spent on pickups. And he was just talking about every detail. And he could go on and on about that. He would talk about screws. He would talk about, magnets. He would talk about potentiometers. He would talk about tuners and their effect on the guitar's tone. And it was the stuff that would make most people's eyes glaze over. But for, guitar players, and I remember Nick Bocott was working for Fender at the time, now, over at Sweetwater, but he worked for Marshall and various other places. Just afterwards, he was just like, wow, that was just like, that was like something else, It was just, for us guitar players, it was just like, this is like sitting there and like having an audience with Jesus or something,
But he was, we try to get sort of at the psychological component of what made the guy tick. And there's no question that there was a certain obsessive, compulsive quality about him and his playing, and even to the distraction of his own bandmates, where he'd be like, no, we're gonna be working here all night. We're gonna be here. Ed at one point in the book talks about sleeping maybe 4 hours, 5 hours a night, and then getting up the next day and going right back in the studio and going right back at it. And one of the things that you discover through this book is how much time this guy spent in the recording studio.
Yeah.
We sort of made this comparison that, when he was a kid, and he was a little bit of an outcast because he was an immigrant, and wasn't great with the language when he was young. So he spent all this time in his bedroom just focusing on whether it was playing piano or playing guitar. He spent a lot of time on his own and thinking about every last bit of his playing, of the guitars, of his amps, this, that, the other thing. And in many ways, it could be argued that 5150 was his studio, was just basically an extension of his bedroom. The place where he would
Still
go to get away from everybody
bedroom.
and just. Yes, exactly.
I'm sure you guys saw the McCartney mini documentary series.
Yeah.
What a missed opportunity to have. It would have been, just imagine if Rick Rubin would have done something with Eddie Van Halen, much in the same way that he did the McCartney documentary series. I mean, all the things that we could have learned. And I'm sure Eddie probably would have just loved going in and tearing, pulling out bits and pieces of guitars and, the guitar parts on tape and all the tracks and things like that.
Well, with all due respect to Rick Rubin and or anybody else, and not to toot our own horn, but that's essentially really what
Toot
this
your
book
horn.
is.
That's what it is for.
It's Eruption, Conversations with Edward Van Halen. And if you don't walk away from this book knowing 99% of what made this guy tick, then you weren't reading the book. Listen, I enjoyed the Rick Rubin McCartney thing. I don't think it was that great, though.
I for the record, I said that the first time that Tony brought it up, I was like, hey, it's pretty. He's like, what?
Well, yeah. I liked it. I learned a few things. I thought some of the the portions that they really bumped up the bass so that you could hear it better. What I was surprised at is how aggressive Paul McCartney's bass playing was at times.
Yeah,
sure.
But there was a little too much. I saw a meme that said something to the effect that everybody needs someone in their life that looks like Rick Rubin looking at Paul McCartney.
Well, that little setup that we did right there, I think tells a lot about what your book actually does, and I'm glad that you guys jumped on that because, there. As you mentioned, there are lots of books. Many things have been done. Many things have been said about his career and his guitar playing and the band and everything. But what you are essentially providing is that, being able to as a reader, really pull up a chair right next to you guys in the room with him.
Yeah. I think that Ed was willing to talk about everything.
Yes.
From his, from his music and from his personal life, but you had to be able to talk. You had to enter through the music in order to get him to open up about the rest of his life, and I think that that's really the lovely thing about his conversations with Chris and I was that. You might get sort of a gear-centric view from listening to this conversation, but I think we also talk quite a bit about how his personal life impacted the music as well. There's a huge section in there about a very controversial point in his life, which is we refer to as the lost years. Mm-hmm. which is this.
This is a Howard Hughes type stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like what is a little surprising is that in the last 20 years of his life, Ed only recorded one record. So what was he doing for those 20 years? You have to ask yourself. And he wasn't just hiding. He was playing music. He was doing different things. And what we tried to reveal in this book was what was his thought process? Why did it all stop? What were the problems that were going on in his life? How was he feeling about that? What was going on with the music?
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing with Ed, and that's something I don't even know if Rick Rubin could have gotten from. I mean, Rick's a producer, and Paul McCartney's a bassist and a musician, so they have a camaraderie. We had a brotherhood with Ed as guitarists, and that's kind of where our conversation started. And it's just I think we had a certain level of comfort with him because we could appreciate. He knew that we could appreciate what he was doing, what he was talking about. If he talked about capacitors and EL34 tubes and 6CA7 tubes, we understood that. And that helped him open up about the other details in his life.
That stuff was important to him.
It was important to him, and it is important to him. But at the same time, that made it easier for him to talk about some of these other issues.
Especially to get into that deep stuff, that's sort of like third chamber of like, who is this guy and what's making him up and what is the result of those circumstances.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to mention, I remember, this is a story that I've shared on the podcast early on. It might have been one of the first episodes. We were just kind of talking about what got us into things. And I remember I was in a music store, and I guess it was probably around 89 because one of the magazines on the shelf it said Eddie Van Halen, guitarist of the decade, and I can't remember for the life of me which one it was, but I remember the pull quote like it was tattooed on my forehead, and it's actually at the bottom of our website, and it has been since we put it up. It says, "I play guitar like I'm falling down a flight of stairs and hope to land on my feet."
Yeah.
That just absolutely nailed me because in some small way, he was like reaching out to like every guitar player at every level.
This is a sort of a interesting story. I was talking with a good friend of mine. You guys may be familiar with his name. I don't know. His name's Andy Aladort. He's a great guitar player. He made his reputation as doing a lot of the transcriptions for Guitar World, but he's also a fantastic guitar player in his own right. And he played in Dickie Betts's band for a while. Mm-hmm. And he was just telling me this story the other day, and I thought it was terrific. So he'd been playing in Dickie's band for Dickie Betts of the Allman Brothers, for those that don't know out there. He had been playing in Dickie Betts' solo band for like 2-3 years with a lot of the same guys. And he said one night they were playing this one show, and this was 2 or 3 years into, these guys playing together. And they had just played an amazing show. And he said, like, it was like I could remember thinking while I was playing how tight we were, how great everything sounded. And I was so happy. And then it went to the bus afterwards. And Dickie came in. And he said, "Everybody come around. We need to talk." And Andy said, whenever he heard that out of Dickie, all of a sudden he would be completely terrified. It wasn't a good sign. And Dickie goes, "You guys played unbelievable tonight. Like, you got every chord right. You were, it was tight as a drum. Like, it sounded like a record." He goes, "If you do that again tomorrow night, I'm going to fire all of you." Because,
I love it.
Yeah, because, if you aren't living on a knife's edge, if you aren't courting danger, if you aren't doing something new and different and exciting, then you aren't really being a musician. You're being a jukebox.
Yeah.
And
maybe evolve.
And that was the thing about Ed, man. He was always talking about, I mean, you'll hear it. You'll hear it. You'll read it in the book. a dozen times where he'll be like, I don't care about the past. I'm looking at the future. I'm looking at the future. And even during his lost years, during those years where he wasn't recording, records, he was recording, and he was always pushing himself in the studio and creating new things. That's where his head was at. So when you say, well, why isn't he just, playing the Frankenstein? Why is he doing this Wolfgang thing? Why is he doing the Ernie Ball thing? It's because he was a restless, creative spirit who wanted to be falling down those steps all the time,
Yeah.
I do want to make a comment that part of the reason I think where I am today was I love to switch out pickups. I couldn't leave anything alone. I had to change things and figure out how they work. Yeah, I'm pretty much at my dream job now because of that. Because cool. I started that little pickup business. I sold it. I got an offer from Gibson, and here I am, building prototypes for artists that have not come out yet. So that's what he means to me. He's
the thing that people overlook about Ed. I mean, it's like, well, at that point in history, in the mid '70s, you did start to see replacement pickups come up, but there was no hero, until Ed came along. He was the one that basically made the business really happen for DiMarzio and Seymour Duncan and all the other pickup companies, replacement pickup companies, because here was a guy who that's what he did. You might have heard the guys in, Kiss used DiMarzio pickups or something like that. And no one thought of it, but Ed was like this whole thing of I'm swapping pickups. I'm changing. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm trying to find my sound. And it kind of ding, it went off for everybody. I get it.
We can do that too.
Yeah. I can do that too. I'm going to try and go on that path myself and see if what I can find, if I can find my own sound,
Yeah. He gave everybody permission to be weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you were talking about how the pushing it to the, if you do that again the next night, I'm going to fire you guys. That's one thing that if you're ever watching the video, maybe strikes you more than anything is have you ever seen anyone more excited and having more fun doing what they're doing at that moment? When, that's the thing that always struck me. Yeah, he's an amazing player, but it's impossible not to just want to feel like that.
I think that's the reason that Ed is so beloved, is that the smile when he was playing was genuine.
Yeah,
no matter what was going on in his personal life or whatever issues he might have had or turmoil. When he got on stage, when he had the guitar in his hand, he was a man who was doing what he was born to do.
I really appreciate this incredible insight into some of your shared experiences and obviously a lot of the hard work that you've put into this book, Eruption, as well as the articles, numerous as they are, especially this most recent one. Chris, it's been an absolute privilege talking to you guys, and I highly encourage everybody to figure out one way or another of getting this book. And on that note, can you tell us how that could happen?
You can basically, and we strongly recommend you pre-order it right now. Help us get on the bestsellers list.
All right.
But you can get it, it'll be at all the major bookstores, or you can, order it online through Barnes and Nobles or Amazon or whatever your favorite place to buy books. It's coming out on Hachette, which is a very sort of reputable, big time.
It's like the Warner Brothers
company
of the book industry.
Okay.
And part of the reason that we're so excited about this book coming out too, besides the fact that we wrote it, is that we think that it actually does more than all the arguments that you can put together between Sammy Hagar, David Lee Roth, or whatever that thing is that, all the gossip stuff. You're going to find out really who Ed was, how he cared about music, and the thing is he probably was the most influential guitar player since Jimi Hendrix. Mm-hmm. And that means he's one of the greatest musicians of the 20th century. So, there's gossip, but also you have to respect this guy as a titanic sort of individual and influence on 20th century music. And therefore, it's really important to look at him through that lens.
Yeah. Indeed. Well, this is available on October 5th worldwide, or at least nationwide. I'm not really sure.
Pretty close to that, actually. I've seen listings for it in Japan, actually, already, and in Australia. Yeah, wow.
So you can get that on Audible. You can get it at hardcover. You can get it on a Kindle. You can get it. Just get it. That's what we're trying to say. Because if you've listened this far into it, then you definitely need to hear the rest of the story, which they've crafted so well, no doubt.
We really appreciate you guys having us on, and it's a real pleasure talking to you. It was a super smart interview. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much.
And it's great to do the gear geek out. So I always love that. That's my life.
That's us.
Yeah. We'll definitely have to be talking again. I appreciate that you said that you mentioned the smart interview. We're about to get stupid. So if you don't mind getting stupid with us for a couple minutes.
Yeah. Let your reptilian brain start functioning.
Stupid is our wheelhouse.
And I'll take over from here. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to head to Stupidville, to one of our favorite times of the show, which is Would You Rather Eddie Van Halen Special Edition. Okay, would you rather? You're walking down the street, you've got your Van Halen signature guitar. Let's say it's the PV. Version. So you're walking down and you've got a gig. So you're heading to the gig and you need to use the bathroom. You have your guitar with you in the bathroom and set it in the sink area and you go use the stall. And you're in there a little bit. You come out of the stall.
Ace or a deuce.
It's gone. Obviously, deuce.
Oh, no.
That's terrible.
Somebody takes the guitar away. Okay, so you're out of the guitar.
Oh, no.
Now, luckily, Wolfgang is there, and he was there to see you play. This obviously is make believe. So he has two guitars. Yeah, he's like, hey man, I don't want you to go without tonight. I've got a treat for you. I got the Red Stripe Steinberger or the Ibanez Destroyer Shark. Which guitar would you rather play for your show?
This is a good one. So Tony's going to lead us off, and then we're going to find out what Brad and Chris have to say, and then we'll check in with Jared. So if we get this right, so the Steinberger, which was the tiny little body and the no headstock,
no pegs,
but it's still got the official paint job.
It does.
So these are legit guitars. These aren't some,
These were Eddie's
DH Gate style guitars, okay?
Right.
And so it's either that one or the Shark, which is the Ibanez Destroyer with the back end basically cut out and linked together with
the
turnbuckles.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a crazy guitar. Okay. Tony, what are you doing?
I think I'm going Shark all the way.
Yeah.
I have never been a Steinberger fan. I can't. If I try to go,
can't even say it.
I can't even say it. I cannot. The words are not coming out of my mouth.
Somebody sliced the stuff off.
I mean, if I go to the first fret,
you just keep going.
My hand just slides right off. So
yeah.
No. So at least with the Shark, I mean, it's relatively an Explorer.
Yeah.
And that's a little more familiar to me. Plus, it's it's so hacked up. It's cool.
Yeah. Okay. Brad, how about yourself?
Well, first I would tell Wolfgang that he has to do something with his hair.
It's just not working for him.
Oh, you're in the bathroom anyway.
Yeah, you're already in the bathroom.
Exactly. There's nobody else around. I'm going to tell him he has to fluff it up or do something. I don't know. Well, here's the thing. I have experience with the Steinberger. Those are actually really pleasurable guitars to play, but when you amplify them or play them with a drum kit, they completely disappear. On stage. I found that out the hard way. I had one of those ones with the wings on it, though. I didn't have like the little triangular.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I had Vito Bratta style through a ADA thing. So yeah, definitely the Shark.
Okay. All right, Chris.
Yeah, come on. The Shark. I mean,
I know.
I thought you might actually go for the Steinberger just for the sheer,
For me, I know Ed made it look cool and everything. I can't really entirely forgive him for what he did, considering how much of the first album he recorded with the Ibanez Destroyer. And I love those guitars. I have an Ibanez. I have a Greco. I have a Hamer Standard Custom. And I could never see taking a saw any of them. But it's just it's the mojo. It's the history. It's just Ed did what with the Steinberger? He did what was it, Pleasure Dome, I think, or he did there was like a few songs, where he used the trans trim. Mm-hmm. But no, it's come on.
I mean, Ed said that it sounded like shit after he cut the chunk out of it. That made me think a little bit about it, but
I don't entirely believe Ed when he said that stuff, because I saw time and time again. He said this guitar sounded like shit. He said that guitar sounded like shit, and yet he used them constantly on stage. He said the Bumblebee didn't sound all that great, but he used it for the bulk of the '79 tour. Yeah. The Dragon, the carved Dragon guitar, he used that on and off for tours. He brought the Shark out, on the first tour, and he brought it out again on the Women and Children first tour. So it's, it was around. It he didn't junk it, so.
Yeah, interesting. Jared, what are you doing?
I'm going to go with the
No, you're not.
The Shark. The Steinberger, I know I could probably like fit in a carry-on, but...
Yeah, it'd be like you were playing a ukulele. Jared's about 6'7" and about 320, so...
I'm a biggie gay.
I'll tell you a story from my gigging days. I played in rockabilly bands during the late 80s and in Hollywood, in Los Angeles. And I got tired of carrying extra spare guitars with me. And I bought this Hohner Steinberger, really cheap, a couple $100. And I brought that
Johnny Winter style.
Wow.
Yeah. And I brought it to a gig, and like the lead singer of the band looked at me like, what's that? And I said, oh, it's my spare guitar. And it's like, that's like one of those fucking donuts that you put in your trunk, It's like, no, you're not going to play that. I don't care if you break all your strings. You're not playing that guitar. Yeah. It's a damn donut.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said about, maintaining the style too,
Yeah, you got it. It's like, what was it? That ad, it's like 90% of feeling good is looking good.
Yeah.
Hair club for men.
It sounds like you and me and Tony might have a little bit of Billy Zoom love between the three of us.
True.
So, okay, I'm going with Shark. That's a done deal.
Done deal.
You should have made that one a little harder.
I thought it would have been harder. But I guess not.
Really?
Well,
really?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Todd, I thought you were cool.
Dang. All the cred I was building up is out the window.
Yeah.
It's gone.
All the way up to the 99-yard line.
Fumble.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that one, Jared. Tony we have to say thank you to a handful of people, and then we're going to say goodbye to our friends Brad and Chris, okay?
All righty. So at this point of the show, there is a very special group of people that we love to thank. These are our executive producers. These are sponsors, patrons of this podcast that help make it possible.
These are the kind of people that rush out to get the Eruption book.
They'll probably buy 2 copies.
Yeah.
It's Christmas coming up, so
It is.
Yep.
And shipping is going to be delayed, so you better order now to make sure that you get your gifts in time.
Look at these guys think of everything.
Yes. So you might be asking
your grandmother probably actually had relations with David Lee Roth, so she may want one for Christmas.
Oh, ain't talking about love.
Oh boy. Goodness.
So you might be asking yourself,
Yes.
how do you become an executive producer? Quite simple. Go over to patreon.com/the Guitar Knobs to check out a couple of different levels in which you can participate. Become a sponsor, a patron of this very podcast. Each level comes with a great bevy of thank you gifts, things like t-shirts and barefoot buttons and stickers and picks and flashlights and keychains and all the good stuff. But there's one thing more as an executive producer. What's that, Jared?
Get to have your name read on the thing.
Your name read on the thing, and that's what I'm going to do right now. So special thanks to these executive producers. Big breath in. Tom Barazin, Darren Gregory, Doug Christ, Ken Sayers, Kevin Robison, Michael Senchuk, Stefan Lamb, Anthony Lathrop, John Anglin, Brad Partridge, John Esterle, Justin Jones, James White, Matt Hart, Bill Gola Guitars, Richard Kendall, Ty Harmon, John Jackson, Jason Rausch, Gary Cooper, Mark Garton, Elad Mizrahi, Magdi, Trevor Gunberg, Rick Calhoun, Anthony Gemolero, John Halverson, and Drew Lopez.
Yes. Brand new Drew Lopez.
Yes, but wait, Todd.
Yes.
We have another group of executive producers. These are the creme de la creme. These are folks we call our grand poobahs.
Yes.
Dinner.
Dinner is served. So special thanks to these grand poobahs. Jonathan Jerusik, Corey Nigro, David Kaminga, Science of Sound.
Yeah.
Cody Foster, Sean S. Tom Imanasco, Adam Johnson, Steve Keys, Tim Nowak, Tyler Rhines, James Pennington, LSJ Music Company, John Williams, Johnny Morales, Mel Sanders, Bob Crouch, Sam Jett, Michio Murakishi, Martin Cliff, Hex Matos, Michael Van Zant, and new this week, a new Grand Poobah, Andrew DeHaan.
That's right.
Andrew!
Welcome aboard, mon frere.
So grateful to all of your support. It keeps the show going, and we cannot, we just can't say thank you enough. So I'll just stop right there.
Right there.
All right. Brad, Chris, where can people, number one, go get this book, and number two, find out what else you're doing in the world?
Well, you can basically buy Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen, anywhere better books are sold. So if you can't find it at, Barnes & Noble, go down the street to, some other place.
Yeah.
But if you go up to Amazon, you could definitely order it up there, many other places, and you're definitely going to want this book. That's like literally the sloppiest plug ever.
That's a bad 5-minute elevator speech.
You got the information out though.
That was like one of Eddie Van Halen's Frankenstein discards right there. Sorry.
All right, and how about what do you can people connect to what other things you're doing in the world?
I'm social media averse, so I just actually started an Instagram page yesterday.
Wow!
So I'm like the Unabomber, basically. I'm kind of like I'm in a one room cabin in Montana
with 500 pedals.
With 500 pedals, basically trying to figure out how to engage in world domination. So I don't want people, coming through my internet lines or whatever and spying on me. But no, that's basically pick up Guitar World magazine. I review products in there. I do tonal recall. That's kind of that's my life. That and writing books. So
that's a good life.
So Chris, you're basically like the listeners of this show.
Well, essentially, I mean, I can go on and on. You were talking about the cars earlier. I built an Elliott Easton. I built a copy of Elliott Easton's custom lead 1.5 guitar, just for the column, actually, just to figure out what was going on with it. So it's just that's what I do.
Awesome.
Well, I'm going to be starting not a competing podcast, a complimentary podcast.
Cool.
That will focus on the music and the songs of Jimi Hendrix.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yes. Hopefully, that'll be coming to your better internets in the next month or two.
Do you have a name for it yet?
It's called Guitar Story.
Guitar Story.
We're going to basically focus on this first season is going to be focusing on the music of Jimi Hendrix. I'm going to have sort of a special guest focus on one song, not the entire career.
Oh, cool.
And we're going to have people like Eddie Kramer,
nice.
Kirk Hammett, John Five, all these different people talking about Hendrix.
That's
Sweet.
awesome. Well, that's one that we will definitely be listening to, and we'll make sure that that our listeners know it's out there once that goes live. Also, just so you know, order placed. Thanks. Confirmation will be sent to your email, and so the hardcover book that I just bought of Eruption is going to go to one of our patrons. So.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Cool.
They deserve it.
Let's see, Tony.
Yes.
Where can people hook up with your stuff?
Head over to pickguardian.com. Check out some of the things that I have available for purchase. But by and large, what I do is custom work. So shoot me an email. Let me know what you need, what you're thinking. I might even be able to give you a tip or two.
Cool.
And we'll take good care of you.
Excellent. Jared?
Please get a hold of me if you would like to know about pickups. Ask me any question about pickups. Get a hold of me through the Guitar Knob social medias.
There you go. You can send me an email, todd@theguitarknobs.com. You can also DM me on Instagram @guitarknobs, and we would love to hear from you. Tell us what you thought about this episode, doggone it. And make sure you go out and get Eruption Conversations with Eddie Van Halen. Thank you so much, Brad Tolinski and Chris Gill, for joining us tonight. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks. It was our pleasure, too. Always great.
Yes. It's great talking to all of you people.
Good.
The many, many people. Jared, Tony,
Yes.
Rob, and Todd.
Yes. All the things.
Rob is a computer voice.
Yeah, Rob.
He was unable to join
He
us
might
tonight.
actually be a computer. I'm not sure. Anyways, all right.
Where's Uncle Rob?
Yeah, no, he's anyways. So hey everybody, have a fantastic guitar week and subscribe.
Hiya. What time is it?
Sorry.
He's got his grandfather clock dinging.
Every episode.
Every episode.
Dooba dooba dooba. You know that.
Yeah.
Chris actually lives inside a gigantic Marshall gingerbread house.
Don't trip over ourselves to answer these guys and stuff.
Yeah, what?
Just like that. Wait, I just got transported to like Monterey Jazz Festival here. What's going on?
I just like the Weller better.
Really?
Where's the white Zinfandel?
Yeah.
Dude, let's start this whole interview all over again.
Yeah, right? Oh, boy.
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/theguitarknobs. Visit our website at theguitarknobs.com for all of our past episodes, 4 on the Floor blog, and other good stuff. You can connect with us on social too at our Facebook page and share your gear and stories on our Facebook group. Also, be sure to check out our Instagram at Guitar Knobs. Catch you next time.